Boutros Ghali was an Egyptian politician and diplomat who served as the sixth Secretary General of the United Nations from 1992 to 1996. Prior to his appointment as Secretary General, Boutros Ghali was the acting Minister of Foreign Affairs of Egypt between 1977 and 1979. He oversaw the United Nations over a period coinciding with several world crises, including the breakup of Yugoslavia and the Rwandan genocide. Born to a Coptic Christian family in Cairo, Boutros Ghali was an academic by training and taught international law and international relations at Cairo University from 1949 to 1979. His political career began during the presidency of Anwar Sadat, who appointed him acting foreign minister in 1977. In that capacity, he helped negotiate the Camp David Accords and the Egypt-Israel peace treaty between Sadat and Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin. He was acting foreign minister until early 1991, when he served as deputy foreign minister for a few months. Boutros Ghali was elected Secretary General by the United Nations General Assembly in 1991 and began his term in 1992, succeeding Javier Pérez de Cuellar. His tenure was marked by controversy and crises, which included the Somali Civil War, the Rwandan Civil War, the continuing Angolan Civil War and the Yugoslav Wars. He received criticism over UN inaction in Angola and during the genocide in Rwanda, and the perceived ineffectiveness of the UN peacekeeping operation in Bosnia led to a NATO intervention. In 1996, Boutros Ghali ran unopposed for a second term as Secretary General, but the United States, long dissatisfied with his leadership, denied his bid by exercising its UN Security Council veto. After leaving the UN, Boutros Ghali served as the first Secretary General of La Francophonie from 1997 to 2002. He then became chairman of the South Center, an intergovernmental think tank for developing countries. He died in 2016 in Cairo at the age of 93. Early life and education. Boutros Ghali was born in Cairo, Egypt, on November 14, 1922 into a Coptic Orthodox Christian family. His father Yusuf Boutros Ghali was the son of Boutros Ghali Bey then Pasha, also his namesake, who was Prime Minister of Egypt from 1908 until he was assassinated in 1910. His mother, Saifla Mikhail Cherubim, was daughter of Mikhail Cherubim, 1861 to 1920, a prominent public servant and historian. 6. The young boy was brought up by a Slovenian nanny, one of the so-called Aleksandrinki. He was closer to Milena, his invaluable friend and confidant, than to his own mother. Boutros Ghali graduated from Cairo University in 1946. He received a PhD in international law from the Faculty of Law of Paris, University of Paris, and diploma in international relations from Sciences Po in 1949. During 1949 to 1979, he was appointed Professor of International Law and International Relations at Cairo University. He became President of the Center of Political and Strategic Studies in 1975 and President of the African Society of Political Studies in 1980. He was a Fulbright Research Scholar at Columbia University from 1954 to 1955, Director of the Center of Research at the Hague Academy of International Law from 1963 to 1964, and Visiting Professor at the Faculty of Law of Paris from 1967 to 1968. In 1986 he received an honorary doctorate from the Faculty of Law at Uppsala University, Sweden. He was also the honorary rector of the Graduate Institute of Peace Studies, a branch of Kyunghee University Seoul. Political career. Boutros Ghali's political career developed during the presidency of Anwar Sadat. He was a member of the Central Committee of the Arab Socialist Union from 1974 to 1977. He served as Egypt's Minister of State for Foreign Affairs from 1977 until early 1991. He then became Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs for several months before moving to the UN. As Minister of State, he played a part in the peace agreements between President Sadat and Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin. 10. According to investigative journalist Linda Melbourne, Boutros Ghali approved a secret $26 million arms sale to the government of Rwanda in 1990 when he was foreign minister, the weapons stockpiled by the Hutu regime as part of the fairly public, long-term preparations for the subsequent genocide. He was serving as UN Secretary-General when the killings occurred 4 years later. Boutros Ghali ran for Secretary-General of the United Nations in the 1991 selection. The top post in the UN was opening up as Javier Pérez de Cuellar of Peru reached the end of his second term, and Africa was next in the rotation. Boutros Ghali tied Bernard Chidziro of Zimbabwe in the first 2 rounds of polling, edged ahead by 1 vote in round 3, and fell behind by 1 vote in round 4. After several countries withdrew their support for Chidziro, fed by fears that the United States was trying to eliminate both of the leading candidates, Boutros Ghali won a clear victory in round 5. Tenure, 1992 to 1996. Boutros Ghali's term in office remains controversial. In 1992, he submitted an agenda for peace, a suggestion for how the UN could respond to violent conflict. He set 3 goals: for the UN to be more active in promoting democracy, for the UN to conduct preventative diplomacy to avert crises, and to expand the UN's role as peacekeeper. Although the goals were consistent with those of US President George H.W. Bush, he nevertheless repeatedly clashed with the United States, especially with his efforts to involve the UN more deeply in the civil wars in Somalia, 1992, and in Rwanda, 1994. The United States refused to send peace enforcement units under UN leadership. Boutros Ghali was criticized for the UN's failure to act during the 1994 Rwandan genocide, during which over 500,000 people were killed. Boutros Ghali also appeared unable to muster support in the UN for intervention in the continuing Angolan civil war. One of the hardest tasks during his term was dealing with the crisis of the Yugoslav wars after the disintegration of the former Yugoslavia. The UN peacekeeping force was ineffective in Bosnia and Herzegovina, forcing the intervention by NATO in December 1995. His reputation became entangled in the larger controversies over the effectiveness of the UN and the role of the United States in the UN. The U.S. journalist Mark Bowden argues that he was responsible for an escalation of the Somalia crisis by undertaking a personal vendetta against Mohammed Farah Aidid and his Habar Gitter clan, favoring their rivals, the Darod, the clan of the former dictator Siad Barre. It was believed that he demanded the July 12, 1993 U.S. helicopter attack on a meeting of Habar Gitter clan leaders, who were meeting to discuss a peace initiative put forward by the leader of the UN mission in Mogadishu, retired U.S. Admiral Jonathan Howe. Bowden suggests that most of the clan elders were eager to arrange peace and rein in the subversive activities of their clan leader Aidid. Still, after this attack on a peaceful meeting, the clan was resolved to fight the Americans and the UN, leading to the Battle of Mogadishu on 3–4 October 1993. Second term vetoed. Boutros Ghali ran unopposed for the customary second term in 1996, despite efforts by the United States to unseat him. U.S. Ambassador Madeleine Albright asked Boutros Ghali to resign and offered to establish a foundation for him to run, an offer that other Western diplomats called ludicrous. American diplomatic pressure also had no effect, as other members of the Security Council remained unwavering in their support for Boutros Ghali. He won 14 of the 15 votes in the Security Council, but the sole opposing vote was a U.S. veto. After 4 deadlocked meetings of the Security Council, France offered a compromise in which Boutros Ghali would be appointed to a short term of 2 years, but the United States rejected the French offer. Finally, Boutros Ghali suspended his candidacy, becoming the second Secretary-General ever to be denied re-election by a veto, with Kurt Waldheim being the first. Later life. From 1997 to 2002, Boutros Ghali was Secretary-General of La Francophonie, an organization of French-speaking nations. From 2002 to 2005, he served as the chairman of the board of the South Center, an intergovernmental research organization of developing countries. Boutros Ghali played a significant role in creating Egypt's National Council for Human Rights and served as its president until 2012. Boutros Ghali supported the campaign for the establishment of a United Nations Parliamentary Assembly and was one of the initial signatories of the campaign's appeal in 2007. In a message to the campaign, he stressed the necessity to establish democratic participation of citizens at the global level. From 2009 to 2015 he also participated as a jury member for the Conflict Prevention Prize, awarded every year by the Fondation Chirac. 27. Death. Boutros Ghali died aged 93 in a Cairo hospital after being admitted for a broken pelvis or leg on February 16, 2016. He reportedly had fallen down the stairs at his home in Cairo. A military funeral was held for him with prayers led by Pope Tawadros II of Alexandria. He is buried at Petrine Church in Abbasiyah, Cairo. Personal life. Boutros Ghali's wife, Leah Maria Nadler, was raised in an Egyptian Jewish family in Alexandria and converted to Catholicism as a young woman. Honorary degrees. He received honorary degrees from Sciences Po, Russian Academy of Sciences, Catholic University of Leuven, Université Laval, Université de Moncton, Carleton University, Université du Québec à Chicoutimi, Charles III University of Madrid, University of Bucharest, Baku State University, Yerevan State University, University of Haifa, University of Vienna, University of Melbourne, Seoul National University, Waseda University, University of Bordeaux, and Uppsala University. Awards and recognition. The World Affairs Council Christian A. Herter Memorial Award, Boston, March 1993. The Arthur A. Houghton Jr. Star Crystal Award for Excellence de l'Institut Afro-Américain, New York, November 1993. Member of the Académie des Sciences Morales et Politiques. Honorary membership of the Order of Canada. Honorary membership of the Russian Academy of Natural Sciences, Moscow, April 1994. Honorary foreign membership of the Russian Academy of Sciences, Moscow, April 1994. Honorary foreign membership of the Academy of Sciences of Belarus, Minsk, April 1994. Fellow of Berkeley College, Yale University, March 1995. The recipient of the Onassis Award for International Understanding and Social Achievement, July 1995. On December 3, 1991, the Egyptian politician Boutros Ghali was appointed the 6th Secretary General of the United Nations and the first person from the African continent to hold the post. He was elected by the Security Council after beating off competition from 14 other candidates. Earlier in his career, Boutros Ghali had played a prominent negotiating role in the Camp David Accords orchestrated by U.S. President Jimmy Carter, which led to the signing of a peace treaty between Egypt and Israel in 1979. But repeated clashes with the U.S. became the overriding theme of Boutros Ghali's 5-year term as Secretary General of the UN, which coincided with a number of challenging crises, chiefly in Yugoslavia, Rwanda, and Somalia, that cast doubt over the effectiveness of the organization. Although with the support of 14 of the 15 members of the UN Security Council, Boutros Ghali ran unopposed for re-election in 1996, a U.S. veto meant he became the first sitting Secretary General to be denied a second term. Cairo, perhaps no Egyptian diplomat of the second half of the 20th century enjoyed the fame and international status of Boutros Ghali. He is the only Arab to assume the role of Secretary General of the UN, with his term lasting from 1992 to 1996. In Egypt today, the name of Boutros Ghali is often recalled amid the crises the country is now facing, especially regarding the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam issue. The Egyptians, including the simplest of them, know very well that he was the Egyptian official who was most associated with African countries in the country's history. Even his nomination for the office of Secretary General of the UN was primarily supported by a number of African countries. Boutros Ghali is one of the most prominent political figures in the history of modern Egypt. His fame went from local to global. The UN faced major worldwide challenges during his term as Secretary General, which coincided with radical transformations on the world scene and was accompanied by the collapse of the Soviet Union, the end of the Cold War, and the start of the unipolar era and U.S. hegemony. The period also saw the repercussions of the Gulf War, the breakup of Yugoslavia, and the Rwandan genocide. During his term, Boutros Ghali successfully developed the working mechanisms of the organization and the means of its interference in conflicts to mitigate them and resolve disputes through peaceful means. He developed a concept for preventive diplomacy and peacemaking efforts, as well as attempting to preserve peace and then support it after conflict ended. Boutros Ghali was born in Cairo on November 14, 1922, to a Coptic family. His paternal grandfather, after whom he was named, was the Prime Minister of Egypt from 1908 until he was assassinated in 1910. His maternal grandfather, Mikhail Cherubim, was an important historian and author of the Ample Guide to the Ancient and Modern History of Egypt. Boutros Ghali said in a press interview, "I was born in a family linked to government bodies from the beginning." Most of his family was associated with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He first assumed the position of acting foreign minister in 1977, succeeding Ismail Fahmy, who resigned from the role following President Anwar Sadat's peacemaking visit to Jerusalem. Boutros Ghali was reinstated to the position in 1978-79 to succeed Mohammed Ibrahim Kamal, who disagreed with Sadat for similar reasons to Fahmy and quit on the eve of the signing of the Camp David Accords. Boutros Ghali remained in his role under Hosni Mubarak's rule and held several other positions, including Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of State for Immigration, and Deputy Foreign Minister for several months before he became Secretary General of the UN for one term, amid strong opposition from the US. Despite his career in the Egyptian Foreign Ministry, he only assumed the role of Minister of State for Foreign Affairs and was never named Foreign Minister. It is no secret to those close to Boutros Ghali that not being named foreign minister made his heart heavy all his life, even though one of the nicknames the Egyptians gave him was the father of popular diplomacy. Boutros Ghali was elected to the post of UN Secretary General in 1991 and faced great difficulties during his tenure. He wrote about these difficulties in his book, 5 Years in a Glass House, in which he revealed many hidden matters, including America's role in the crises that swept the world at that time. His book also shed light on his souring relationship with Washington, which he described as being content with loud external positions, while pushing the UN into raging battles without providing it with real power or the necessary funds. This souring relationship ultimately cost him his role. In 1996, 10 UN Security Council members, including Egypt, Guinea-Bissau, and Botswana, tabled a resolution calling for the extension of Boutros Ghali's term for 5 more years. 14 of the 15 members supported the resolution, but the US used its veto and he was forced to leave the most important international organization in the world. Boutros Ghali explained that there were several reasons for the US veto against his nomination for a second term, including political pressures related to the 1996 U.S. presidential election, disagreements between the U.S. and UN over issues like the Bosnian War and the Rwandan genocide, and tensions over the outstanding dues of the U.S. to the UN. After leaving the UN, Boutros Ghali headed the Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie as its first Secretary General. He also chaired Egypt's National Council for Human Rights, before resigning in February 2011 following the outbreak of the January 25 events and the departure of Mubarak. When the state in Egypt decided to establish the National Council for Human Rights in 2003, it could not find a more worthy and prominent Egyptian figure to head it. He had all the required qualities and was chosen to head the council from its foundation until 2011. He was reappointed in 2013 as the honorary president of the council. Among Boutros Ghali's stances that Egyptians remember the most was when they overthrew the Muslim Brotherhood, and he wrote to Ban Ki-moon, the UN Secretary General at the time, saying, "What happened in Egypt on June 30, the day that saw protests demanding the removal of Mohamed Morsi, was a full-fledged revolution, during which a fascist regime in a religious guise was eliminated." Boutros Ghali wrote in his message that the role of the UN, with all its mechanisms and components, is to achieve international peace and security and cooperation between states, and that what it produces must seek to fulfill its principles and charter to serve peace, security, and justice, and fight terrorism. He also wrote that the people of Egypt revolted to eliminate a fascist regime that had a religious guise and worked to divide society in favor of one faction at the expense of all the other people. He added that the people of Egypt also revolted to eliminate a regime that deepened discrimination. Boutros Ghali passed away on February 16, 2016, at the age of 93, in a hospital in Cairo after a fight against illness. He was preparing to travel abroad in a UN air ambulance, which had arrived to transport him from Cairo to Paris to complete his treatment and undergo urgent surgery. However, his fate was to pass away in Cairo, holding on to it until the last breath, as if Egypt refused to let his soul leave its lands out of loyalty to him and in appreciation for his time and effort. He dedicated his life to Egypt from a young age. Egypt bade him farewell at a military funeral, with prayers led by Coptic Pope Tawadros II and attended by President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and other state officials. He was buried in St. Peter and St. Paul's Church in Cairo's Abbasiyya district. Thank you for watching this video.